Welcome to the lands of science fiction stories. I wish you a pleasant listening experience.
The Galactic Council had long believed that humans, with their modest planet, would remain a quiet corner of the galaxy, but the discovery of Earth changed everything. What shocked the galaxy wasn't Earth's technological advancements or their military might, it was something far more primal. Enter Caius Varan, a Terran diplomat with a reputation for getting involved in high-stakes negotiations. Caius found himself dispatched to the planet Juth, a world dominated by a highly advanced, all-female alien species who, despite their longevity and intellectual brilliance, struggled with fertility cycles that rendered them unable to bear children for vast stretches of time. But when Caius arrived and accidentally became the center of attention at a state banquet, the Xylith Queen Lyra was left stunned by one particular fact. Human males were fertile at all times, with no need for mating seasons or lengthy rituals. Caius, oblivious to the cultural shock his biology had caused, found himself unknowingly drawn into a galactic scandal when Vixra, the Queen's most trusted advisor, began developing a scientific curiosity about him that went beyond diplomacy. Caius's diplomatic mission quickly spiraled out of control. During a particularly tense negotiation session, Vixra asked him outright about human reproduction. Her bluntness shocked the human, but Caius was known for handling difficult situations with poise. "Human males," she said, her exotic eyes scanning him with a hunger that made his skin tingle, "do not require seasonal cycles to reproduce, correct?" Caius shifted in his seat. "That's correct. Our biology is a bit more adaptable." Vixra's gaze lingered on him, and Caius began to realize that the Xylith, with all their advances, had never encountered a species quite like humanity. He noticed the way her pheromones filled the room, growing thicker with each passing second, clouding his thoughts. "And your mating process," Vixra continued, leaning closer, her voice like silk, "it is continuous, unrestricted by external factors?" Caius swallowed hard, his mind racing. "We don't really have seasons, no." The room fell silent. Suddenly, Caius realized just how different human biology was, and how interested the Xylith were in it. Couldn't refuse. As the night continued, Caius couldn't help but notice the odd looks cast in his direction. His unease grew, but it wasn't until Queen Lyra herself approached him later that evening that things took an unexpected turn. "You humans are a curious species," the Queen purred, her long, elegant fingers trailing along the edge of his chair. "Always fertile, capable of reproduction without delay." Caius cleared his throat. "It's one of our unique traits." Queen Lyra's lips curled into a sly smile. "Unique indeed. You realize what this means for us, don't you?" I'm not sure I follow." The Queen's voice dropped to a whisper. "You, Caius, may hold the key to revitalizing our population." Caius's heart skipped a beat as the weight of her words sank in. Was she proposing what he thought she was? Before he could respond, Vixra joined them, her eyes glowing with intent. "You are unlike any male we have encountered," Vixra said, her voice smooth. "And we believe you could be the answer to our problem." Caius suddenly found himself at the center of attention, with two of the most powerful women in the galaxy gazing at him with an intensity he had never experienced before. In the days that followed, Caius learned more about the Xylith than he ever wanted to know. The species had evolved in a way that made reproduction a rare and highly coveted event, but human males, with their constant fertility, were an anomaly that the Xylith could not ignore. Queen Lyra proposed a bold plan, an alliance between Earth and Xylith, one that would solidify a strong bond between their people. But it wasn't just an alliance of diplomacy, it was one of biology. "You could sire an entire generation of Xylith offspring," the Queen said, her gaze piercing as she studied Caius. "Our people could thrive again." Caius was left speechless. Was he truly being asked to participate in this? But it wasn't just about repopulation, it was about survival. The Xylith were on the brink of extinction, and their pheromones were becoming more and more intense as Caius spent time around them. It became harder to think straight, harder to resist the primal urges bubbling beneath the surface. As the days passed, Caius struggled with his decision. The thought of becoming a key figure in the survival of an alien species was as daunting as it was exhilarating. He had always prided himself on being a man of logic and diplomacy, but now he found himself caught between duty and desire. Vixra visited him in his quarters one night, her presence filling the room with a heady scent that sent his pulse racing. "You must understand," she whispered, her lips inches from his. "This isn't just about science, this is about life. We need you, Caius. I need you." Her words were like fire, igniting something deep within him. The line between professional and personal began to blur as Caius struggled to maintain control. He knew that once he crossed that line, there would be no going back. But the Gilith pheromones were relentless, and Caius was only human. Caius lay in his quarters, his mind racing. The idea of becoming a key to an entire species' survival weighed heavily on his conscience. Queen Lyra's words echoed in his head, but it was more than just the words. It was the way she had spoken them, the subtle but unmistakable allure in her voice. The Gilith pheromones were intoxicating, and even now, alone in his quarters, he could still feel their effect on him. The door slid open, revealing Queen Lyra herself, clad in ceremonial robes that flowed like liquid silver. She glided into the room, her presence commanding yet graceful, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. "Caius," she said softly, her voice as smooth as silk, "I can see the weight of our proposition troubles you." He rose from his seat, his breath catching in his throat as she moved closer. "It's a lot to process." Queen Lyra smiled, a slow, deliberate smile. "I can help you process it." Before Caius could react, the queen was close enough for him to feel the warmth radiating from her skin. The air between them crackled with tension, her pheromones wrapping around him like an invisible net, pulling him closer. His instincts screamed at him to retreat, to maintain his professionalism, but the lure was overwhelming. "Your kind is different," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "You are not bound by cycles or seasons, you are always ready." Her fingers grazed his arm, sending a shock of electricity through him. Caius swallowed hard, his resolve crumbling with every passing second. This was more than just diplomacy, it was seduction, pure and simple. Lyra's lips hovered near his ear. "Perhaps it is time we stop pretending this is just a negotiation. We both know there is something more here, something primal." Caius felt his body respond to her words, to the pheromones saturating the air. He had never experienced anything like this before. It was as if his mind was no longer his own, his thoughts clouded by desire and the sheer biological pull of the Gilith queen. "You don't have to decide now," she whispered, her breath warm against his skin. "But when you do, you'll know where to find me." With that, she slipped away as silently as she had arrived, leaving Caius standing in the middle of the room, his heart racing and his mind reeling. The following day, Caius tried to focus on his diplomatic duties, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the encounter with Queen Lyra. Her touch, her words, and the pheromones, he couldn't shake them. And then there was Vixra. Every time she entered the room, he could feel her eyes on him, her silent invitation lingering in the air. It wasn't long before Vixra cornered him again, this time in one of the palace's ornate courtyards. The air was thick with the scent of exotic flowers, but it was the Gilith pheromones that truly filled the space. "Caius," Vixra said, her voice low, "I can sense your struggle." He tried to step away, but she was faster, closing the distance between them. Her slender fingers traced the edge of his jaw, her eyes dark with desire. "You don't have to fight it," she whispered. "We are far more compatible than you realize." Caius clenched his fists, trying to regain control of himself. This isn't why I came here." Vixra smiled, a predatory glint in her eyes. "Oh, but it is. You came here because we need you, Caius. And deep down, you know you need us too." Her words sent a shiver down his spine, and before he could protest, Vixra pressed herself against him, her breath hot on his neck. The pheromones were overwhelming now, clouding his thoughts, drowning out any sense of reason. "Let go," she murmured, her lips grazing his skin. "Stop fighting." For a moment, Caius was lost in the sensation, the heat of her body, the intoxicating scent that surrounded him. But then, with a monumental effort, he pushed her away, his breath coming in ragged gasps. I can't, he managed to say, though his body betrayed him with every tremble. Vixra's eyes narrowed, but she stepped back, her smile never faltering. You will, she said softly. Sooner or later, you will. That evening, Caius was summoned to the queen's private chambers. His heart raced as he made his way through the palace, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He couldn't deny the attraction he felt. The biological pull was undeniable, but he also knew that giving in would mean crossing a line he could never return from. The doors to Queen Lyra's chambers slid open, revealing the queen draped in shimmering fabrics that accentuated her every curve. She sat on a throne-like chair, her eyes glowing with a mix of amusement and desire. Caius, she purred, gesturing for him to approach. You've been avoiding me. I've had a lot to think about, he said, his voice betraying his nerves. Lyra's smile widened. You humans are so fascinating. Always overthinking things. We Gilith, we act on instinct. She rose from her seat and moved toward him with the grace of a predator, her robes flowing around her like liquid silk. You felt it too, haven't you? The pull between us. It's undeniable. Caius opened his mouth to protest, but Lyra silenced him with a single finger pressed to his lips. You are different, Caius. You have the power to save my people. And I have the power to give you everything you desire. Her words were a promise, one that hung in the air like a tantalizing fruit, just out of reach. Caius could feel the heat of her body so close to his, could smell the pheromones that filled the room like a drug. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to give in, to take what was being offered. But somewhere, deep inside, a small part of him still held on to his resolve. I can't, he whispered, though the words sounded weak even to his own ears. Lyra's eyes flashed with something. Was it disappointment? Anger? But then, she smiled again, this time with a dangerous edge. You will, she said softly, her voice like a caress. You will. Caius stood in the queen's chambers, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Queen Lyra had made her intentions clear. She wanted him not just as a diplomat but as the key to the survival of her species. And yet, despite the overwhelming temptation, Caius couldn't ignore the ethical dilemma he now faced. Lyra stepped closer, her fingers trailing along his arm. You fought so hard, Caius. But we both know it's futile. We need you. I need you. Her words hung in the air, thick with desire and expectation. But something inside Caius shifted. He had been swept up in the allure of the Glyph, the pheromones clouding his judgment, but now clarity was returning. This wasn't just about survival or diplomacy, it was about consent, control, and freedom. Caius took a deep breath, stepping back from the queen. I came here to help broker peace, not to become some kind of breeding tool. Lyra's eyes narrowed, her lips tightening in displeasure. You think this is just about reproduction? You underestimate us, Caius. You underestimate me. Her voice was sharp now, the seductive edge replaced with something far more dangerous. Caius knew he was walking a fine line, but he had to stand firm. I understand your situation, Caius said, his voice steady. But forcing someone into this, it's not the way. The queen's expression darkened, and for a moment, Caius thought she might retaliate, but then her gaze softened, and she let out a long, weary sigh. You're right, she admitted quietly. I've let desperation cloud my judgment. I see now that what I was asking of you was unfair. Caius blinked, surprised by her sudden change in demeanor. I'm not saying I won't help, he said cautiously, but it has to be on terms we both agree to, mutual terms. Lyra's eyes searched his, and for the first time, Caius saw something beyond the regal exterior. Vulnerability. What would those terms be, Caius? She asked softly. He hesitated, then spoke with conviction. We work together to find a solution. Not just through reproduction, but through science, diplomacy, and understanding. If we can find another way to help your people without using me, I'll do everything in my power to make it happen. Lyra studied him for a long moment, and Caius could feel the weight of her decision hanging in the air. Finally, she nodded. Very well, she said, her voice measured. I accept your terms. We will find another way. Relief washed over Caius, But he knew this was only the beginning of a long and challenging journey. The Queen's people needed help, and there were no guarantees that a solution could be found quickly or at all. But for now, he had stood his ground and maintained his integrity. As Caius turned to leave, Lyra called after him. "Caius!" He paused, glancing back at her. "If we do find another way, and if you ever change your mind, know that the offer still stands." A faint smile tugged at Caius's lips, but he shook his head. "I think I'll stick to diplomacy." With that, he exited the Queen's chambers, feeling a sense of closure wash over him. The galaxy was a strange and unpredictable place, filled with challenges Caius had never imagined. But today, he had proven to himself that even in the face of overwhelming temptation, he could make the right choice. Weeks passed, and true to their agreement, Caius and Queen Lyra began working closely together to find alternative solutions to the Xylith fertility crisis. With the help of Earth's leading scientists and the Xylitha's advanced technology, they made progress, albeit slow. In the meantime, Caius's reputation as a diplomat grew. Word spread across the galaxy of the human who had not only resisted the powerful allure of the Xylith but had also brokered an alliance based on mutual respect and understanding. One day, while Caius was reviewing reports in his quarters, Vixra entered the room. Unlike before, her presence didn't fill the air with overwhelming pheromones or unspoken intentions. She was calm, composed, her demeanor professional. "We've made progress," she said, handing him a data pad. "It's not a complete solution yet, but we're getting closer." Caius scanned the information, nodding. "This is good. It's a start." Vixra hesitated, then added, "I misjudged you, Caius. I thought you were like every other male we had encountered, driven by primal urges. But you've shown me something different." He looked up from the data pad, meeting her gaze. "Humans are more complicated than we seem." She smiled faintly. "I see that now." As Vixra left the room, Caius couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. The mission had been nothing like what he had expected, but in the end he had forged a path forward, one that was built on more than just instinct and desire. It was built on trust, respect, and the hope for a better future. Later that night, Caius received a message from Queen Lyra. It was brief, but its meaning was clear. "We will endure. Together." Caius smiled to himself. It wasn't the ending he had imagined when he first set foot on Xylith, but it was a new beginning, one filled with promise, not just for him, but for both their species. As he prepared for the next stage of their mission, Caius knew that the galaxy was full of challenges yet to come. But if he had learned anything from his time on Xylith, it was that humans, no matter the odds, always found a way to adapt.